Good afternoon, Packers fans. Aaron Negler here with your Packers Daily Chat, coming to you live on the Cheesehead TV social channels. It is Tuesday. The Packers knee deep, I guess you could say, into the offseason. Of course, the headlines today are going to be about Aaron Rodgers all over the internet. No different here at Cheesehead TV. I've already put a video out about Aaron Rodgers' appearance on the McAfee program this afternoon. Make sure you check that out. I'm sure there will be questions about it. I just don't want to lead with it because, like I said, it's going to be everywhere today, probably throughout the week. And we all know Rodgers is going to take some time to make his decision. So I wanted to focus on Matt LaFleur because it's interesting. We are undoubtedly going to get announcements about LaFleur's staff, what he chooses to do, whether he loses people. Jerry Gray is up for the coordinator position in Atlanta. Maybe a few other guys move someplace else in the league. Who he chooses to bring in. I know Nathaniel Hackett has been talked about. I'm personally pining for Justin Outten if he, is made available by whoever comes in Denver. I know his brother is part of the conversation now since he has been let go by the Jets, though apparently there have been a number of calls already, or were actually when he's still with the Jets, to try and get LaFleur 2 employed somewhere. And we know that Matt made a call to San Francisco back in the day and was blocked by Kyle Shanahan. My point being, we'll undoubtedly get some kind of announcement from the Packers about Matt solidifying his staff prior to getting any kind of indication from Aaron Rodgers about his plans for the future. For me, it's really comes down to Matt LaFleur and his staff this season, more so than anything else. Yes, Gutekunst is going to have to make a lot of decisions and create the roster, and that is his job in the offseason, certainly providing the ingredients, so to speak. But I think Matt and his staff are going to be under a microscope in a way they weren't this past offseason, heading into 2023, because we all saw the shortcomings. We all saw the failings. We all saw the adversity. And it's real easy to be, we make fun memes and do the Matt LaFleur's awesome thing on transplants. And we still, and we'll always love Matt LaFleur here at Cheesehead TV. But man, you don't really know much about a coach until he faces adversity. And Matt certainly faced his fair share this past season. I am fascinated to see how things play out going forward with Matt, this coaching staff, keeping Joe Barry, which I know is a lightning rod decision. If he does indeed do that, I'm still not 100% sure that Barry will be back, like lock solid that's going to happen, although that certainly seems to be trending that way. But it's all on Matt now. There are no extenuating circumstances. And yes, even if Aaron Rodgers retires, well, then guess what? All of those, he's got Aaron Rodgers, or what is Aaron Rodgers doing at the line of scrimmage? Or, they're doing all this stuff that Aaron Rodgers wants to do on the offense. That all goes away. And now suddenly it's all on Matt LaFleur and his offense and what he wants the offensive direction of this football team to look like. So it's kind of interesting right now in this kind of moment in Packers history, Matt's tenure and his career, the fulcrum at which it kind of, the spotlight gets a little more intense and a little more heated certainly should come in 2023 for LaFleur. And look, I'm not intimating that I think he's under some kind of like hot seat pressure or what have you. I think Mark Murphy is going to take a 30,000-foot view. He did just sign him to an extension, though I know throughout the league, just because you've just signed an extension doesn't mean a whole lot. Teams are more than willing to swallow some of this contract money they've paid to coaches, especially since it doesn't do anything when it comes to the salary cap. But like I said, I think Murphy will always take the long view, and he's going to give Matt as much time as necessary to prove himself one way or the other. Now, if they have another disappointing season, another season where they miss the playoffs next year, regardless of who's at quarterback, I think, then things start to ratchet up. Things get a little hotter on his seat. There's no doubt about it. Then maybe some pressure comes from Goody, from Murphy to try and make some changes along the staff. But, Matt wanting to stick with his guys and wanting some continuity along his staff, I think is a smart call. And I understand people wanting to kick Barry to the curb. Lord knows. It's not like they improved greatly, even though they were kind of given a bunch of tools to work with on the defensive side. It's not like I think they finished 20th in DVOA this year, and they had a way more talent than a 20th team in DVOA should look like. So I understand the calls for Barry to be ousted, but I also understand Matt wanting to, like I said, find continuity on a staff where each and every offseason, it seems, there's been some movement, there's been some exodus, there's been some kind of ripple where he hasn't been able to keep, the main core intact from year to year, whether it's special teams coordinators, he's gone through a few, whether it's, being handed a defensive coordinator he didn't have much of a say in when it comes to Mike Pettin. I know technically he could have chosen his own guy at the time, but it was strongly intimated by the front office through the reporting of Tom Silverstein and others that, it was strongly suggested that he keep Pettin, which he did. And we all know how that ended in Lambeau Field against Tampa Bay. And then he had the moment to kind of pick his guy. And that was Joe Barry. And I understand the kind of hand wringing of who else was available, who fans or other people might have wanted. And I'm one of them. I was not a Joe Barry guy. Still really am not. But Matt wants his guys to continue to develop and improve as a group. And hey, if you want to go down swinging or get to the promised land and win a championship, don't you want to do either one of those things with your guys? I mean, the scrutiny is going to be crazy regardless. Fans are going to be braying for blood if they come up short in any which way, regardless of who your coordinator is. So if you're going to take those slings and arrows, or again, you're going to be doused in champagne and be holding up a trophy, either one of those scenarios, I get wanting to be with the guys that you have kind of, learned with, developed, kind of grown with. And yeah, and there's no kind of world where they can't improve as a unit, as the coaching staff can become more adept, better at what they do. You heard Matt in his post, season press conference talking about how some of the things needed to be looked at on offense as far as falling behind the curve a little bit and needing to get back out ahead. I think that's all really smart and really healthy. And I understand trying to work with a group that you've clearly come to a place after a year together where you know how to communicate, what works, what doesn't, trying to shift and mold that rather than always continuously bringing in new voices, firing people, trying to bring young guys up who probably aren't ready yet. I just think one more year for Matt LaFleur to kind of work with the guys he has chosen is a smart way to go about it. These are my 2 cents about it. And like I said, I'm sure we'll hear about his kind of staff movements here way sooner than we hear about Aaron Rodgers definitively playing, yes or no, next year. So that's why I wanted to talk about Matt LaFleur today. Hope you're all doing well. Good to see everybody in the comments section. So Krista's here. Of course, Krista's here. And Johnny Rivers is here because he's a diehard. Smalls, thanks to the super chat. I was promised the last dance, but instead I got 2 good dinners, 2 awful desserts, and at the end of the night, 2 dads with chiseled jawlines and Boston accents chasing me around with shotguns. MJ and Scotty, 12 and 17, were not. Wow, that is an analogy right there, my friend. That's well done. That's well done indeed. Are you ready for Last Dance 3? Because here it comes. Lord help me. I can't handle it. I just can't handle it. Jonathan, how are you, man? Thanks for super chat. If Love ends up as QB1 next season, do you see Matt and company going with a younger backup to develop or a vet backup? I think some of it will depend on how the draft falls. I think there's a good chance they draft a quarterback regardless, and that'll be fun. But I think it depends on who they end up or who is available when they draft. Maybe they bring somebody in prior to the draft as a vet who they can then release if they get a guy they like. I suspect they'd prefer a vet more than likely, but it really kind of depends on who's available when and how things correspond with Aaron's decision. And then, okay, now that roster spot is opened up and who do they bring in and who's available? I have to expect Rodgers is going to make that decision before the start of free agency. He has intimated before he's not going to hold them hostage. So they should have their pick if that were to be the case. That doesn't necessarily mean that a guy they like or, guy they think could work behind Love as a backup is going to want to come to Green Bay. Maybe there's a guy out there that wants an opportunity to start and thinks maybe if Jordan falters, I can get a chance. There's a lot of levels there and a lot of conversations to be had. But my suspicion is, they probably prefer a vet, but I still think they look at a young guy in the draft, regardless of whether Aaron's back or not. Vex, thanks to the super chat. Can't wait for the spineless front office to run it back again and jettison Jordan Love for peanuts while torpedoing our future. Things will be different this time, right? Now, look, you're talking about torpedoing the future. I mean, there's no guarantee that Jordan Love is going to be a long-term viable starter in the NFL. I certainly think he's going to be, but that's not, God knows Nagler's never right. Nothing is a sure thing. I understand the reticence to turn the page. I understand wanting to try and make it work with Aaron one more time. I'm not saying that like that is completely out of the realm of logic or, you know, uh, rational thought. It's just a preference. Just because they would maybe, as to your nomenclature here, torpedo the future. I just don't think that's cut and dry. And that's what makes it such a difficult decision. I mean, hell, you know me, Vex. I would have done it last year, but here we sit. Menace, thanks to the super chat. Who's one player coming out of camp, not counting free agents, draft picks, you thought was going to be a huge contributor and disappointed you? Tyler Davis in 22. I don't know, man. That's interesting. You say Tyler Davis. I mean, he wasn't insanely productive, but he played much better in the second half of the season than anybody was giving him credit for in training camp. I mean, camp, is such a kind of mishmash of goals and what they're working on, and guys can rise and fall. And I know Davis had some rough preseason games, but he played well for what he was asked to do. I just don't know what people were expecting. Did you think he was like going to come out and put up, George Kittle numbers or something? One player coming out of camp, not counting free agents or draft picks. I mean, that kind of limits the scope there, right? One player coming out of camp, probably, you know what? Probably Rasul Douglas early in the year. I didn't see his struggles coming out of camp. I thought he had a really strong camp, and then somewhat because of most likely being played in the slot when he's very clearly a perimeter guy. That experiment did not seem to produce results, at least not positive ones. So that would be probably mine. Jeezy Baby, thanks to Super Chat. We haven't fully seen Matt LaFleur's offense. I think we need to see a year or two of his true offense before we make major proclamations. Vikings are frauds. I mean, that's a major proclamation you can make because the Vikings are always frauds. We know that. Yeah, the Matt LaFleur offense is an interesting thing, right? You can kind of pick it apart because, of course, in LA, McVay was calling the plays, and then you go to Tennessee, and it's not like he had a lot to work with at the quarterback spot, though I know Titans fans hated how he juggled the running back position and kind of like follows him to Green Bay with every one of us trying to tell him to run Aaron Jones more. They all wanted him to run Derrick Henry more. But I think, the Matt LaFleur fulcrum, as I called it earlier, is so fascinating to me because, yes, if Jordan Love is the starter next year, you got all the excuses, whatever you want to call them, about Aaron Rodgers are all off the board. And then it is all on you as a play designer, game planner, play caller, though he did intimate that he is open to possibly giving play calling duties to someone else, which that would be fascinating. But yeah, the Matt LaFleur offense will be a very interesting thing to see whenever it is unveiled. I just don't think it's going to be this year. Joe, thanks again. Super chat. Packers 39-10 with Ty Summers 8-9 without him. Look at you. Look at you trying to get people all riled up. I mean, I think Brandy Lewis is going to come after you. I hate to say it. Abdul, thanks for the super chat. I get 17 wanted to leave, but why didn't we keep MVS? Oh, now that is the question. I get they were trying to shed salary cap, and those are the hard choices you have to make, right? When you're kicking the can down the street, you're going to lose guys that you don't think you can kind of fit into your cap structure. And once they traded Devontae, they had a lot of space, but they used that space, making sure they could re-sign Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas. MVS getting what he got from Kansas City. I just don't think the Packers were ever approach that number. I'm with you, though. I mean, I don't think you have to look much further than how different that offense operated with MVS on the field and without him. The most stark example of that, of course, is the playoff game. When without MVS's presence there and the ability of the defense to completely key on Devontae Adams, it changed the entire dynamic. I'm with you, man. I just think they wanted to become a more rounded team. And in trying to do so, they kind of cut their nose off to spite their face a little bit. And it's Sometimes that's the price of doing business. I think if the defense had performed better, if obviously that side of the ball had coalesced and become a real, like a top 5 unit, then you could kind of understand, right? You could say, all right, it's we took us a little bit of a step back here on offense. Clearly, they found some pieces for the future in Watson and Dobbs and maybe even Torrey. But they had to find their way and they took a step back. But we did so because we knew, or we had hoped, that this side of the ball on defense was really going to rise up and almost maybe change our identity. Obviously, none of that happened. And that's why the MVS kind of decision really hurts to my eyes, because the offense was completely different with him out there. Michael, thanks for the super chat. How big of a difference is Jordan Love's first year being 23 versus 24? At this point, do you think it's stunting his growth if you make him sit another year? I don't know if it's stunting his growth, but it's just delaying the start to his development, because he's done what he's going to do as far as sitting on the bench and learning and doing kind of walkthrough stuff or scout team stuff or whatever he does when Aaron Rodgers is getting vet rest days, or, he's done all that. And he's run the number ones with the number ones for 2 off seasons now? All the spring stuff and the OTAs and all that operation, in and out of the huddle, knowing the plays, adjustments at the line of scrimmage, reading after the snap, all of that he is doing day in and day out with the ones when Rodgers isn't there. And then during the season, he's getting minimal amounts of snaps with the ones. Although, like I said, vet rest days, especially this year with the thumb, he got a lot more action with the ones. And I think that kind of showed when he got his opportunity against Philly. He looked very comfortable running the offense. But yeah, at this point, I don't think there's much more he can do. He's got to play. If you sit him another year, you're just treading water instead of kind of jump starting the next chapter and letting your young guy start figuring it out. I mean, look, I think no one's going to confuse him for Jalen Hurts anytime soon, but you look at the struggles Hurts had initially, and people were writing him off and saying, oh gosh, he's terrible. And if you don't believe me, go back and look at the live tweets of any game that the Philadelphia Eagles played in prime time a year ago. And then fast forward to this season and look how good Jalen Hurts looks. Well, yeah, because he played. And yes, they helped him. They got pieces. They went out and got A.J. Brown. Yes, I understand the team also developed along. But the young quarterback at some point needs to play to get better. And Jordan Love is at that point. He was taken as a very young prospect. No doubt about it. He was a project coming into the league. But they have done what they can do with him in the environment that they've created. The next step for Jordan Love is to play, which is why it's just frustrating beyond belief that they didn't turn the page last year. Because now we would have had a year of Jordan Love starting under their belt. And this could be the year he'd be blossoming into a much better starting quarterback. But instead, they are treading water on a guy where if you have a quarterback on his rookie deal, that is when you can take advantage of that fact. Add pieces because your quarterback contract is so low. But now that's all shot to hell. Tyler, thanks for the super chat. How can a DC that went 0-16 grow in year 3 at Green Bay? Well, because he's got more talent. He's got a better way of working. He knows what works against what offenses, and he's running a completely different scheme than when he went 0-16. 0-16 is a team stat. I know people like to throw around kind of that albatross around Barry's neck, but it's not like, look at this team this year. There were a number of games where the defense played well enough to win, where the offense just shit the bed. That's not on the defensive coordinator. By the way, one of those games was the win and get in game. Absolutely 1,000,000,000%. If they're not kicking field goals to start that game, they win that game. Dave, thanks for the super chat. I love Aaron Jones, but how many games would he stay healthy for if he was used as much as the fan base wants him to be? Let's find out. Is that a good one? Did I answer that question? I mean, we keep making sure he's not overused, and we keep making sure that they don't, too much wear on the tires. Meanwhile, they're keeping points off the board and punting instead of picking up first downs. Football's a contact sport. Guys get hurt. Utilize him. He's your best offensive weapon. And I'm not saying no one thinks he should be a 20 carry a game guy, but 3 carries and a half, come on now. Come on now. If you can't give the ball to a dude more than 3 times, why is he out playing football? Come on. Buddha, what's up, man? Hey, Nags, what has Matt LaFleur done to grow as a coach since that Kansas City game where love started? That's an excellent question. I'd love to get an answer to that one. I'd love to talk to Matt about it. I haven't been able to yet. I will say, though, I was heartened by, the fact that Jordan did look as comfortable as he did in the offense in Philadelphia when he had to come in for Aaron. That said, doesn't really answer much as far as what would a game plan look like if Jordan Love is the starter. That was my biggest disappointment in that game. Was it really felt like Matt kind of inserted Jordan into a game plan and an offense that was completely designed around Aaron Rodgers. And I understand that's what you build all offseason. You can't just rip it up. I get that. But you can change what your tendencies are, and you can, you've got play calls that don't feature spread formations or ask your guy to be in the gun a bunch and go empty, especially as they continue to all out blitz you. That was an unfortunate day, not just for Jordan, but for Matt. There's no question about it. How has he grown since then? I'm fascinated to find out. No doubt. Dolphin, what's up? Thanks for super chat. Hey, Nags, if Goots traded for an impact player when the Packers won 13 games, would we win a Super Bowl? Also, why don't the Packers change up their philosophy? Well, they did, Dolphin. Did you not notice all the cans that were kicked the last 2 years? That has not been the Packers' MO. That is a complete change in philosophy. Now, some of that was driven by the pandemic, but some of it was driven by the fact that they wanted to keep the band together, so to speak. And they thought they were real close to winning a championship. And now they sit here with real issues and problems in the salary cap because they did exactly that. They changed up their philosophy. As for trading for an impact player, I mean, these things are that could be like, who is that? Literally anybody. They tried to trade for Chase Claypool, for God's sakes. Is that an impact player? I don't know, man. Could it? Sure. But I don't think an impact player when they won 13 games, unless it was a left tackle, was going to mean much against Tampa Bay. Wasn't going to mean much against the 49ers. David Bakhtiari being hurt really, really threw a wrench into a lot of their chance on these last 2 seasons. And the fact that he's back now and played at an all-pro level certainly bodes well, but you'll never get that chance back. So yeah, it could. I mean, man, you gotta have to be more specific. If they had traded for X player, maybe, but I doubt it. It's just there's way. It's so very, very, very rare that a player comes in and completely changes things. I mean, I understand, especially this season, when you look at what the 49ers did getting Christian McCaffrey, and you see how seamless that's been and how productive he's been. People will sit there and go, oh, they should have done that. Well, should they have traded for Christian McCaffrey? They've got Aaron Jones, who they don't even give the ball to. Their offense runs through their quarterback. That's not going to, in San Francisco, they're literally helping a rookie out. Every situation is different. Every way of working is different. It's never just as easy as just add a dude. Sanjay, thanks for the super chat. Do you think the team would be better off if Matt LaFleur turned over play calling to someone else? Who's the someone else? Who's to say they wouldn't be worse? Remember when everybody was clamoring for McCarthy to give away play calling, and then he did, and Tom Clements stunk up the joint? I don't think Matt's the greatest play caller of all time, but I think he's got a decent feel. He's got a good rapport with the quarterback, and more often than not, he gets in a decent flow once the game starts. His openers used to be great. They have fallen off. Has to fix that. Clearly needs to do whatever needs to be done to work and fix the red zone offense. But again, sometimes it's better the devil you know. And I'm not saying he shouldn't do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying you should, not even think about it. Yeah, sure, think about it. But to who? Is you Adam Stenavich? We're going to go 3 yards in a cloud of dust here? I kid, Adam. I kid. But, who's the candidate? Who are you handing it off to? What are their qualifications? I mean, I think Getsy kind of started to figure it out down in Chicago, but you saw how tough that was at first, working with Justin Fields in the Chicago offense. It's never just Like, insert play caller. Look at Nathaniel Hackett. He was so bad, he got fired. Now, a lot of that is because he lost the locker room, etc. But, man, it's not like he was handed some bum. Russell Wilson, as poorly as he played this year, he couldn't even get him on track. He couldn't even, pick up first downs. Couldn't even get him playing solid football. Justin Outen, I think, called some nice games after Hackett got fired. But who would have thunk that? Justin Outen was a tight ends coach for Green Bay 2 years ago. It's all a question of who. I sure, but I just don't know who the guy is. Me. You should give it to me. No, don't do that. Smalls, thanks to the super chat. 12 asking for all his buddies back is getting old, especially since having them didn't get it done the last 3 years. This is starting to feel like LeBron, and I hate basketball. I touched on that on my Rodgers video. You should check it out because I'm kind of with you, man. At some point as a general manager, Brian has to say, look, man, I understand what you're saying, and I understood your disgruntled summer a couple years ago where you wanted more communication. Well, here's me communicating to you. For me to do my job, I've got to be able to move on from some of these guys. We can't keep coming back to, bringing back old, aged veterans and expect them in a young man's game to improve or get us to a better spot. At some point, you got to recognize that it's time to make some turnover. And that doesn't mean you can't have a guy here or a guy there. But when you've got, Big Dog, Randall Cobb, Mason Crosby, hell, throwing in Alan Lazard at this point, the guys who have been there for a long time, and they keep kind of banging their head against the wall with the same guys. Bring in some youth, bring in some talent, some explosiveness, some upside. I understand. Again, I get it. I get the glue aspect when it comes to the locker room, the veteran presence. I'm not saying get rid of all of them, but man, needing all of them back so your quarterback can be happy, that feels like a bit much. Lord Scotland, thanks to the super chat. Thanks for all the Packers content. Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. What else we got here? John, thank you for the super chat. Agree with Smalls. This is a football team, not a social gathering to hang with your friends, throwing the pigskin around. It's time to see J-Lo at quarterback. Well, that took a turn there at the end. I mean, it might be time, but I don't think it's time, if you know what I mean. I think that's where we're at. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I think we're all right back here next January talking about the same stuff. I can't wait. There you go, everyone. I got to get going. I can't thank you enough for hanging out, talking Packers each and every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Cheesehead TV social channels. Please do me a monster favor. Hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then tell your friends and tell your family. Cheesehead TV, we are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. Go Pack, go.